How can someone land an interview?
They will spend too much time on each application.
How do you make your resume stand out?
If you're in college, there's only so much professional experience that you can include. Apply to places in your area just for interview prep and for backups.
Do you think that can also help one negotiate a higher salary?
First, you focus on just landing any interview that you can. A lot of the job search, it starts actually in your first 2 years. People always want to help like a younger version of themselves.
What are some common mistakes you have seen engineers make when they're trying to land their first job?
The people who get the most interviews are the ones that
Just to begin the things, can you tell the audience about yourself, who you are, what you've been doing so far?
Yeah, sure. So I am a senior software engineer. I currently work at Pinterest. And the last year and a half, I've been writing a newsletter and writing on LinkedIn. And it's just had pretty insane growth. I'm up to around 70,000 newsletter subscribers now. And overall, my goal is to help software engineers grow in their career, achieve their goals, and provide actionable advice that they can actually, action on rather than just sort of get advice and then move past it right afterward.
So we'll dive straight away into the topic of interest for the audience today. So the audience who's watching us right now is mostly people in college or recent graduates who are looking for jobs or looking to get promoted faster, right? So my first question to you is, what are some common mistakes you have seen engineers make when they're trying to land their first job?
It is a mix because some people do this and other people do the complete opposite. But
Right.
one mistake is that they will spend too much time on each application and only do a few. So for me, I would recommend that first you focus on just landing any interview that you can, because those first few interviews, I mean, I'll tell you, like, from my personal experience, I have practically failed all of my first 5 to 7 interviews out of any like interview set that I've done. When
Hmm.
I was first graduating college and was applying for my first job, trying to get one, and eventually landed at Gusto. What happened was I was just like applying everywhere and finally landed a few interviews, which I thought, was not going to happen, but they just started coming in like around the same time. And it's like something
Hmm.
happens where there's like some sort of time frame where, I don't know, you just sort of, your place in line starts to come to
Right.
fruition.
Right.
And after those interviews, I was like, okay, finally, like I might actually get a job, because up to that
Hmm.
point, I was basically like worried that I wasn't even going to get anything after college and I
Right.
would just, be unemployed or something. And yeah, the first like five to 10 interviews that I did, they were all fails. But after that point, I think something clicked to where I finally had things down, and I just started getting accept back to back. And it just, goes to show that like you really want to try to line up the ones that you care the least about early on, and then have the ones that you care the most about afterward. And that would actually be probably another mistake, is people see the big names that, everyone wants to go for, like Google, Meta,
Right.
Amazon, all that stuff. And they're probably
Right.
putting those applications in first and getting those interviews first,
Yeah.
and they are most likely to fail if they leave those, up to be the first ones rather than getting some practice in first.
How can someone land an interview? Obviously, we talk about landing a job, but for that, you
Hmm.
have to get an interview. And to land an interview, that's the part where most of the students, or rather fresh graduates, fail.
Just to be like 100% honest, I am a big advocate for getting advice from someone that has most recently experienced this, situation. So someone in your shoes that's like 1 to 2 years ahead of you, that, maybe has just landed their big job at one of the top tech companies. In my situation, that for me that happened 6 years ago. So
Right.
I'll be a little bit more out of touch from that
Hmm.
side.
Okay.
But what I can say is that from experience working with hiring managers now, having a bit more experience, the people who get the most interviews are the ones that do two things. They first, like I said, apply to as many places as possible because just straight up, right? That just increases your odds. I mean, you could even compare it to like dating if you wanted to, like, hey, if you're going to ask like 200 people out on a date, you're just naturally increasing your chances, of getting a date, right? Uh, so then the second thing is referrals and networking. And of course, I think the problem is that a lot of people that give advice leave leave it there. They just say go network. And that's what I want to try to avoid doing, because I want to give you actual tips on how to do
Right.
that.
Right.
Because networking is a very convoluted term, I think, and
Hmm.
people have different interpretations. But um, what I would say is try and if you're in college, then you should try and reach out to anyone that you can find that has a commonality in what you have. So in my scenario, I went to Lehigh University. And what I did was I used LinkedIn. I got the premium free trial thing and I searched for all the people like at that were Lehigh University graduates at companies that I was interested in, and then I would reach out and I would say, "Hey, I'm a fellow Lehigh grad. This is my background. If you would, spare a referral, I would be so appreciative." And thank you so much. And like, I would basically give them all my info up front to make the referral as easy as possible. That's
Hmm.
another mistake when networking is like you basically make it difficult for the other person to help you. So don't
Right.
make it difficult for them to help you. And one thing that I often see people do is they'll send like huge walls of text of like their whole like life story, right? That
Yeah.
is making it difficult for them to help you and making it easier for them to just say, okay, this is not worth it. I'm going
Yeah.
to like just skip past it. So we can jump
Hmm.
into more tips and stuff like that, but that's one that I would give if you're in college.
This video is kindly sponsored by College Vidya. College Vidya is a platform which has various undergraduate, postgraduate, and online courses. You have to select the course you want, fill up some basic details, and then answer a few questions. After that, the AI model will automatically generate a list of suitable, government approved online universities for you. Now, two key things to note here. The first one is CV subsidy. Students can receive a subsidy of up to rupees 10,000 once they take admission in any university. And the second one is College Vidya also provides placement support services and online career booster programs which are worth rupees 6,999. You can get them for free if you join from the link in description below. Also, don't forget College Vidya has a jobs and internships portal which you can access from day 1 of admission. Through this portal you can directly apply to thousands of jobs and paid internships. So, don't forget to make use of this opportunity and check out the link in description below and join College Vidya today. Alright, let's resume the video. Also, talking about getting interviews, I think one's resume plays a very big part in you getting an interview and then ultimately getting that job. So, my question here is ultimately what all things you can try, right? You can make projects, you can do competitions, but how do you make your resume stand out even if you have done the same things as the other people have done?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a bunch of ways to make your resume stand out. I mean, if you're in college, then you got to think, right? Like there's only so much professional experience that you can
Correct.
include. There's
Exactly.
maybe half of your resume that's going to go
Right.
to that. Sometimes even less, right? I mean, any internships or um, just yeah. I mean, really, it would just be internships, I think.
True, true, right.
So you got to ask yourself, what do you want that other half to look like,
Hmm.
and what is going to catch the eye of a recruiter? So for me, in my case, that was leadership opportunities. So for
Okay.
me, I was orientation leader at my university. That was like a an opportunity where you can lead 20 plus first hired new college students and walk them through the process of acclimating to the university. And then another thing that I did was I attended hackathons. So I put together teams for the hackathon. I tried to win and ultimately ended up doing that actually like a couple times. So then I was able to have like couple, like first place hackathon winner here, first place hackathon winner here, and then I could describe the project and I could also link to it as well. So that
Mm-hmm.
helped
Okay.
me, just sort of connect the dots for the recruiter and show them like, oh yeah, like I actually know how to code, and wow, this
Yeah.
person seems a little bit on top of their game because they're doing these leadership activities and winning at these
Right.
things. And I don't know what the possibility is for different people in their situation to be able to do something like this, but for me, one thing that I did was I had something that was similar to a hackathon but a little bit outside of the scope of that. So I actually noticed a problem at my school, and this is a case for like schools all around the world. There's so many places where you can apply technology to some sort of solution at your school. So in my case, we had an issue with tutors, like tutors and tutees, is what I would call them. And they like our school had a system, but the matching system was like terrible. People did not really enjoy it as students. They would get matched up with tutors that didn't really know much, and they had to wait an extremely long time as well to find a tutor, all that stuff. So I basically made a tutoring site for our students that kind of went out. To be honest, it kind of went outside the bounds of the school. It was more like a private thing, but I was able to use that in my interviews as like, wow, like Jordan is someone who recognizes problems and he
Correct.
goes to find these solutions to these things
Hmm.
and just goes and does it, right?
Right.
And that was something where I remember in the interview where I got accepted at Gusto, the interviewer told me like, "Wow, your story of doing that is so inspiring." And it
Mm-hmm.
was like at that moment where I was like, "Okay, this person is 100% going to be like a yes or a strong yes." Right? So
Okay.
I
Hmm.
think if you're able to do something like that where you kind of go outside the bounds of what's normal and just really show that you're not just doing what everyone else does, but you're doing something totally different, then that can really make you stand out.
Do you think that can also help one negotiate a higher salary?
I would say for new grad offers, negotiation is more rare nowadays because they typically try to keep it equal, like due to certain laws. Now, this is my experience in the U.S., and it was also my case with Gusto. Specifically, with Gusto, they would not let me negotiate at all. But you never know. I mean, of course, hey, if you're more of someone if you're someone that has something more to offer, then yeah, you definitely have more leverage. So it could help.
Also, often what happens is new grads think that the first job they get is going to be their last job. So they
Mm,
often aim for it to be the best one, right?
mm,
But
mhm,
in your experience and opinion, what do you have to say about getting promotions and also switching jobs to gain
mm.
more experience and get better salaries?
Yeah, absolutely. I would say the first job that you should have should be one where you know that you're going to grow a lot.
Mm. Right.
You want to make sure that it will either help you grow or set you up for your next one very well. Or if you can have both, then that would be, amazing. In my case, I think Gusto was a really good place for that. I spent 3 years there, and now I'm at Pinterest, and I felt like I had options to kind of go like
Hmm.
up to a bigger size company or
Right.
down, to a smaller size company. and that's what I ended up doing. I ended up going to a smaller size company, and then eventually going back going
Hmm.
back up to now a bigger size company at Pinterest. But overall, the thing that told me that Gusto was a really good place for growth was the sense that I got of how much engineers collaborated. So
Hmm. Okay.
for me, I mean, I know this is a little bit more of a unique situation because I don't think this is going to be the case for everyone, but I
Hmm.
can just share my experience and maybe some of it will resonate. So with Gusto, one thing that was super unique was they had a pair programming culture. They would literally in the interview process, you had a pair programming exercise with someone, and this is because like it was just ingrained in their culture. Like they would have these pairing stations like all around the office, and you would, just if you are struggling on a problem, you would just ask the person next to you, hey, do you want to go
Hmm.
pair program on this? And then you guys would
Hmm.
like sit at a computer together, the mouses would be connected, and the monitor screens would show the same thing, and then you guys would help each other.
Right.
So I had that as part of my interview process, and that was one thing that really stood out as like, oh, okay, this is a place where I'm going to be able to learn really
Hmm.
well from the
Hmm.
people around me. And
Hmm.
the other thing that I learned when I got there was it was a very like bottoms up type culture where
Okay.
you could recognize problems in the same way as
Hmm.
my story with with the tutoring system, how I
Hmm.
recognized the
Hmm.
problem and just
Hmm.
went and solved it. Is at Gusto, there were so many cases where I would be driving an initiative that I started myself, not something necessarily where like you're just constantly getting assigned stuff and just hammered with tasks that you can't move on to something that you're interested in, or you see a problem and you want to advocate for that, anything like that. At Gusto, it was very bottoms up, so you could just call out a problem, say, hey, I think I have a solution, and then like start working on it maybe within a couple weeks. So that was another aspect that I think helped me a ton, and just dive into a ton of different areas, learn based on the problems that I recognize, and set me up for success. And last thing I'll say is the reason why I think it's so important to focus on the growth early on is because once you hit like 5 years of experience, let's say if you wasted your first 5 years just sort of like doing the same trivial tasks over and over
Hmm.
again, or
Hmm. Hmm.
like set up an API endpoint, make a database
Right.
table, call that
Hmm.
API, and like you only do that, then
Hmm.
after you get 5 years and maybe you switch to another job, the expectations are going to be a lot higher on you,
Right.
and they're
Hmm.
going to be like, wait, why is it that you can only do these like four set of things that you've been doing that like the last 5 years? Shouldn't you have like had
Hmm.
a little bit more variety in your
Hmm.
experience? So that's why I think it's so important to focus on those things, because
Hmm.
I see a lot of cases where people do,
Right.
you know, uh, sort of face the consequences of not having that strong growth early on.
So, Jordan, an interesting point here. Whose responsibility is it to make sure that one grows in their first job? Is it the individual's responsibility, or the company also has to look after them? And how can one do that? Like
Mm.
learning while being on the job.
It is a mix of both, but the thing is like there's some sort of baseline, right? There's some sort of baseline that the company is going to help you grow or is expected to, right? Some sort of amount that's just going to be the same for everyone. Now, the amount that you get involved, this is you can now increase that baseline to increase your growth rate depending on how much effort you put in. So if you want to just stay at this baseline, then sure, just sort of do do nothing and just wait till your company sort of encourages you to do certain things
Yeah.
and follow along that path that they set for you. But
Hmm.
I don't know about you, but I'm always someone that's, going to try to take it to that next level and try to
Right.
go, a bit faster. So, and I think a
Hmm.
lot of people probably listening, to you, uh, are that type as well. So
Correct.
what
Correct.
I would say is try to find what are the exceptional people doing that you can replicate. And
Hmm.
That's going to be different at every company. So there are
Right.
some commonalities that are going to be the same. One
Hmm.
thing that I would say is take advantage of getting more than one mentor. This is like an example where, maybe your company has a mentor system, right? They have like this is the baseline. They maybe have a mentor program and you just get one mentor and you can meet with that mentor once every 2 weeks. Who's to say that you can't get 4 mentors and meet every week, right? You could do that. So that's you taking it from here to here. So, um, that's what one of the things that I did in my scenario where I would get different mentors that knew different things. So one was like very front end oriented,
Hmm.
or I would
Okay.
say like front end, like UX, UI oriented, and the other was like very
Correct.
like API oriented. And so I would
Got it.
learn different things from them. And the other
Interesting.
thing is when you have those mentors, really take advantage of them. Like now you have ChatGPT at your disposal. Like just
Right.
let ChatGPT to give you a ton of like really in-depth, unique questions that you
Hmm.
can ask your mentor. Like to literally just tell ChatGPT your situation, right? And then
Right.
and then get it to give you questions because another issue that I see is, especially like as someone that mentors a lot, is
Hmm.
people expect the mentor to do all the work. But the thing is like the mentor, a lot of the times is like just hounded in stuff that they need to do, like ruthlessly prioritizing things, right? And unfortunately, a lot of the time, like the proactiveness piece of that mentoring is going to fall, lower on the priority list uh, for a lot of mentors. And it's just natural. It's not their fault, nothing like that. So it's your job, I think, as the mentee to really take the initiative and come up with good questions and prep your mentor and help them help you.
Also, what should one look for while choosing someone as their mentor?
I would say the first thing is that you should look up to them. So it and you should look up to them not just from one perspective. Like you should not just look up to them from a technical perspective, but the ideal thing is you would look up to them like as a person. Because I mean, you can, of course, choose like someone that is like technically brilliant but kind of a jerk as your mentor and just sort of accept that like okay, I'm just going to like try to, push down all the other like, jerk pieces of learning from them. But it's kinda hard, honestly, like, when you talk to someone, a lot of the time, like, you just naturally take various, pieces from them and sorta a little bit of their, like, personality on things. So, I would say, be careful of that because it could definitely get you into trouble, especially if you're, like, junior engineer and you start saying some of the same things as that, like, jerk technical guy, just because you're like, "Oh, yeah, he's my mentor, so I should be cool," like, just sort of repeating a lot of the same stuff, and sometimes it just doesn't work because, like, there's a little bit more power dynamic that he has or she has playing in their favor. So, someone that you look up to, and then another thing is when you have conversations with them, they should also not always just jump to solutions or
Okay.
make you they should basically help you think through
Hmm.
their thought process and not just give you
Right.
solutions as well.
Hmm. Makes sense.
There were times where I had a mentor and they they would kind of like I would give them like a 3-minute explanation, to some sort of challenging situation that I'm dealing with, and they would say something like, "Why don't you just do this?" And
Hmm. 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 Hmm.
like afterward, I'm just like, yeah, I can,
Hmm.
but
Hmm.
it
Hmm.
doesn't feel like you understand me.
Correct.
And those situations are sort of signs where you might
Hmm.
want someone different as a mentor
Right.
because they're
Right.
not someone that is like actively seeking to understand the situation. They maybe is or just someone that's like I mean, they might have good intentions, but I don't know. They
Hmm.
they don't fully understand how to
Hmm.
mentor effectively. And if
Hmm.
I'm like, if I'm looking for a good mentor, then I want someone who's going to like dig deep, ask questions, try
Hmm.
to get to know like my full process around it, and then help me like close the gap on my understanding
Right.
uh, in a sort of like gradual way, not just like why don't you just do this.
If I were to ask you, for someone being in college right now, what can be a blueprint in your opinion if, let's say, they want to get a job in the coming 2 or 3 years? What should be a blueprint they should follow, irrespective of their tech stack?
I'll get to advice, but it's important to recognize that a lot of the job search, it starts actually in your first 2 years, right? I mean, you need to be landing those internships. Those internships tell your future employer that you can work in some capacity. So I'm going to hope that you have some. Uh, if you don't, then it will be more challenging. It will
Hmm.
certainly be more challenging
Correct.
because the
Yeah.
expectation is that you would have been doing some things,
Hmm.
for those first couple years during your summers. After that point, then I think it goes back to trying to get referrals and applying to many places. So I would say that you should look for top 100 company lists. There are a couple sites. If you search for like top 100 tech companies to apply or something like that,
Hmm.
then you can do that. I would also
Right.
say apply to places in your area just for interview prep as well and for backups. So a lot
Right.
of people, maybe I mean, in my scenario, I was in Philadelphia. You might not even know
Hmm.
where that is. It's like in,
Hmm.
Pennsylvania,
Yeah.
and not really like a tech oriented place. And so I was applying to places in San Francisco and New York when I was first graduating college. But I
Right.
also applied to a bunch of places in Philly, and I did like in-person interviews, there, and that actually helped me get prep. And I got a few offers, and they weren't too bad either. So I know a lot of people definitely go for those like San Francisco, New York type applications, but don't limit yourself to that, because at the very least you can get some practice and some backup offers in case you do just need to stay local. So I would say do that. Oh, and levels FYI is a good place to get the job board. There's also, you could search Wealthfront top 100. I think is another one. That's actually where I found Gusto at the time. So definitely would agree there. And then Y Combinator, I think, is another place you can check. So you can like apply for startups. A lot of startups will definitely hire like new people. I've seen those happen personally. And then yeah, I would say do outreach on LinkedIn. Sort of put yourself in the shoes of the person you are reaching out to, and try and frame a message in a way that if you're in their shoes, you would be likely to say, yeah, sure, I'll refer you,
Hmm.
anything like that. So a lot of
Hmm.
times that comes down to, like I said, finding some sort of commonality and
Right.
bringing that to attention right away. Like, hey, I'm Jordan. I noticed we
Hmm.
both went to Lehigh University. Or a lot of
Yeah.
times, some people, they'll say we had the same degree. So my
Hmm.
degree is actually kind of unique. It's called computer science and business. It's like a
Okay.
combined degree type of thing.
Okay.
And so people would be like, hey, like I'm also in
Hmm.
this program that you were in like
Hmm.
5 years ago. So that, any way that you could kind of make yourself seem like a younger version of themselves, people
Hmm.
always want to help like a younger version of themselves. So if
Right.
you can do that in your outreach, and do that. And also, like, when you do the outreach, really perfect those details,
Hmm.
because if someone is going to put their credibility on the line and refer you someone that they do not know at all, then you need to not give them a reason to
Hmm.
say, oh, I don't want to risk this. Like, you don't
Right.
want to give them any reason to do that. And so if your formatting of your message is off, if you have typos in your resume, if
Hmm.
your
Right.
resume just looks like you are just trying to like rush things out and you didn't like fully polish it ahead of time before sending it to them, then people are going to say no. It's just, it's natural. The other thing is too, like, um, people will say no regardless, even if you do everything perfect. So just accept that you will get no's, and the best thing that you could do is just try to increase your batting average, so to speak, right? Just get more, increase the or decrease the amount of no's you get and increase the amount of yes you get. You will get some on either side regardless.
Finally, what's one piece of advice you wish every engineer to take very seriously and follow it, irrespective of the stage of the career they are at?
Yeah, I mean, given that I am the author of High Growth Engineer, and my whole branding is around a growth mindset, I would say that a lot of people certainly suffer from imposter syndrome, including myself, and the best thing that you could do for your career and for facing those situations of imposter syndrome is just accepting that you are not perfect, and you never will. You never will be perfect. And the thing that you can do is just always try to continuously get better, and compare yourself to a previous version of yourself. If you see at the end of the year, like, wow, I don't even, like, if at the end of every year, or uh, you're maybe comparing some sort of actions that you did like a year ago, and you're like, wow, like I
Correct.
could have done that thing so much better now that I
True.
know this. Or like looking at your
True.
past code, and you're like, oh my gosh,
Mm.
I totally know how to improve this like so much better. Like that's a good
Yeah.
sign, right?
Yeah.
Because it means that you're constantly growing, and you're constantly finding ways to get better. And
Yeah.
one way that you can actually break through the imposter syndrome as well is by asking for feedback a lot more. A lot of
Mm.
people are scared of asking for feedback
Right.
because they don't want their precious, ego to be hurt, right? And I totally get it. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
I've
It
been there.
happens.
I Every time I'm like, man, if I ask, I know they're gonna say something that like is gonna it's gonna hurt a little bit. But if you the quote that I go back to, that I think I have trademarked on, so I'm proud of that, is if you accept that there's always room to grow, then feedback will never scare you, because it's just going to help you, grow even more. So keep asking for that feedback, and keep looking for how you can grow more. Don't view yourself as someone with a fixed mindset. That was one thing, especially early in my career, where that was one of the things that I was complimented most on by my mentors. Is they would say, like, at my mid-year, or not mid-year, but like mid-internship review type of things, like, I really like your growth mindset. And that's one of the things that your mentors and your manager, your intern manager, are going to look out for, because they want to know that if they hire you, that you're going to be able to grow into those, positions. So just do everything you can to show that passion.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jordan, for joining in and sharing your experience with my audience. I hope they loved it.
Thanks so much, Sanskar. It was a ton of fun, man.